Now, last week with Thea, you heard the very start of the story. How the younger son rejects his home, leaves his whole way of life and heads off. As Thea said, this wasn't a gap year with a definite return in the plan, but cutting ties with everything. The older son is silent. He doesn't speak up for the father, nor chastises his brother. And the father, he releases him, but leaves the door open for the possibility of his return. If you weren't here last week, I do highly recommend going back to hear Thea's sermon from last week online, just to help set the story. And so today, we find ourselves in that far-off land with the younger son, the one who left all he had known to make his own way in the world. Whether this was the exuberance of youth or lack of experience, the lost son becomes lost through his own decisions and choices. You might wonder why I'm here rather than behind the lectern. You might have noticed a few little props this morning. For those of you who are worried, I have covered the table with some cloth, so you don't need to worry. So, my first prop is a mirror. The son thinks not only that he knows what he wants, but that he knows what is best. I wonder if we know people like that. I wonder if you can think of a time when you were certain you knew best. Like putting a mirror up in front of your face, you knew the right answer, the right choice to make, and no one was going to persuade you otherwise. This handy little mirror, I could just see me. It's not big enough to show anyone else. There's no listening to another voice or seeking other opinions. Your way is the way. And like looking in the mirror, you can see yourself. His disregard and disrespect for his father, his lack of sense of responsibility to his family, and his overwhelming desire to pursue his own passions and pleasures reveal that the prodigal son's only concern was himself. He chases his pleasure at all costs. He pursues his passions, which lead him far away from family and friends and all the familiar things that bring comfort and security. A place, whether physical or spiritual, where all he can see is himself, his wants, his desires, his dreams and pleasures. Thank you, Healy, for being Earl Chaffinch this morning. This is very luxurious. I recommend if he allows you the honour of a little. I wonder if any of you have got some very nice clothing, just as nice as this. I don't. But like our character in The Way In, where life is all about excess and choices, the thought of spending £11,000 on a bottle of drink, I squirm at paying a couple of quid for a drink. It doesn't matter how nice it is. When Mum and I travel, if you have to ask the price and there's no sticker, we know we can't afford it. If you have to ask, nah, it's out of our price range. But for Earl Chaffinch, much Pravinder, nothing is out of his range. The luxury, lavish lifestyle, instant pleasure, price no object, price no limit. For some, we know in our world that is their life. We see them on the news and we see them on social media living the high life. And there are some who look up to that, who are jealous of that, who want that ultimate lifestyle, unlimited and free. I wonder what that wild living might look like for you. So, this is quite heavy for me. It's like I could hide. This is like my ultimate talk experience. I'm not actually here. Fantastic. I have got to stand for it because that is too heavy for me. When the son left home with pockets full of what should have been enough to wisely live on for a long time, there was no thought of poverty. He wasn't thinking long-term retirement planning or putting aside for a rainy day when unexpected bills come your way. Here he is, in a new place, with all the excitement that brings. Many of you know that I have travelled lots. And in every new country, there are new sights and sounds, new experiences to try, new food and drink, new places to visit. And I think I can be forgiven, for sometimes that went to my head. I have been known to do the odd helicopter trip or hot air ballooning. But having turned his back on his family, there's no one there to give guidance, to speak words of caution or encourage restraint. Sometimes, when you're far away from home, things that you would never normally do come into your vision. You see, I usually only drink alcohol at Christmas and New Year. I've got time off from work, usually know where to go, don't need to worry about driving. However, on a cruise, cocktails. My favourite cocktail is the pina colada. Do catch me over coffee if you'd like to hear the tale of how I managed to have a lineup of 3 pina coladas awaiting my attention one afternoon by the pool. I wonder if you too have been a bit excessive when on holiday, eating or drinking more than you usually would. The difference, though, a holiday is time limited. You might overspend, but the time to do so will come to an end. And you'll go home and possibly have a credit card bill to pay off. But for the younger son, there's no time limit. For him, it feels like this way of life can be forever. And although we don't get it in this passage, time passes. And it isn't time that stops him in his tracks and brings reality home, but circumstance, a famine. The passage tells us that this is a severe famine. And so this just doesn't just impact on him and his choices, but everyone around him. And what happens when an extraordinary event affects everyone? Then it's everyone for themselves or for their family. Remember back to the early days of COVID, the stockpiling, the fear of anyone who wasn't in your bubble, and in your bubble was your family first, the people you lived with and were closest to. And the youngest son, he's already spent everything, and he has no family to fall back on. He's alone in a faraway land and in need. I have borrowed a prop from Martha. This is Evil Pig, because Martha doesn't like this pig. Yes, it made some of you jump, didn't it? I have the best video from Thea of this pig. But he was desperate, and he did a desperate thing. Pressed into hard times, he does the unthinkable. Socially and from his own perspective, he found work slopping around among the unclean and unbidden and forbidden. His stomach, as empty as the pursuit of pleasure, has left his spirit and soul. The thrills of friends and festivities are just a taunting memory, doing nothing to satisfy the ache in his belly. His emptiness of his stomach was probably matched by that of his spirit, as he's tempted to throw one handful of feed to the swine and the next into his own mouth. A hand clutching rotting food, and a stomach hungry enough to tell his brain that, this is enticing. But the reality is, it brings him to his senses. I wonder what would be rock bottom for you. What would be the working with pigs? Something so unthinkable, so disgusting, and so desperate to stop you in your tracks. I have some more pigs here. I went on a pig hunt, and at my mum's, I found, you can't see this, so I'm going to move this and this out of the way. Because these pigs are not any pigs. These pigs love mud. Have you ever heard the saying, happy as a pig in mud? Yes, thank you for answering that. Pigs love mud. Being in mud can be fun and comfortable. And there are times when actually living the right way is not comfortable. Actually, sometimes we are stuck in mud. Aha. I did remember a cloth. There are times when we can be so far from God that we've almost forgotten that there's another way to live. For the tales of rags to riches, there are those of riches to rags, those who've lost it all. Famous among them is Johnny Depp, who at one time owned $17 million in taxes and lost $560 million in wild spending. That amount of money blows my mind. I can't imagine what that wild spending looked like. But I wonder if, like you remember the game. I knew it as Stuck in the Mud. It was a kid's game of chase. When you were tagged and caught, you had to stand still, you had to open your legs, and then somebody else who was running around had to crawl through, and then you were released. Ta-da! And you could join back in the game. The aim was for everyone to get stuck and tagged, and the people, I wonder, are you that person this morning that's stuck in the mud and needs release? The son realized he had chosen to be lost, but now he could choose to be found. His wild living had trapped him, and only one person could release him. So he made a plan to return home. He remembered his father's servants. They had plenty and spare left over. They were cared for and looked after. The memories of his childhood probably came flooding back of all that he'd thrown away. He realizes he isn't worthy, he's messed up, but if I go back and become a servant, my life will be better than it is right now. My freedom has got me into trouble. So if I become a servant, I won't have freedom, but I'll have a place to belong and food in my tummy. When we too see the emptiness of our own situation, when we realize that the things that we love are just garbage, and they've become so appealing that we just are comfortable in it, when we understand that in our Father's house is an invitation to safety and security and wholeness, that's when we repent. We turn from our own lives, the ways that we've been going wrong, and we turn to the Father. The life the man found was empty. He longed to be back in his father's home, so he prepared to repent. He turns from his own way and heads home. And he practices these words over and over again. I am not worthy. I am not worthy, but just make me one of your servants. So he gets up and starts the journey back home to his father. But no spoilers, because that's next week. But that's what it means to come to God. So I wonder in those 8 short verses where your challenge is today. Are you sat there thinking, yep, it's all about me, my way, my choices? Is it all about the wild living that tempts us away with short-term pleasure? Are we far away from God this morning, alone in a strange land? Is it time? Is it time to come to our senses, to return from the holiday back to God? I wonder what the unthinkable, despicable, desperate situation you might be in this morning that separates you from God. Shall I do it again? Yeah. Are you stuck in the mud? Do you need releasing? Then it's time. It's time to turn back to the Father. The man represents each one of us and the choices we make And we might not have spent it on multi-million-dollar clothing or gadgets from Harrods. The choices we make in life, sometimes we find ourselves suffering from the poor choices we make. But it only takes the willingness to humble ourselves, admit our choices, and to come back to God. And He will fully restore us. We'll not just receive simply food and a roof. Spoilers for a few weeks' time. We don't have to remain with the pigs when our Father welcomes us home. If the younger son had remained away, he would have just kept suffering. If we choose to remain in our stubborn choices, we also will continue to suffer. And that's not the Father's way. Thankfully, it's not the end of the story. You only need to choose to come back. So I wonder, what will it take for you to turn and head back to the Father and let Him hold you in His warm embrace? Please stand, if you're able, for our next song, Mighty to Save.